The city breathed in steel and glass that morning, tall, indifferent, glittering under a sun that didn't care if you were hungry, tired, or 5 years out of work. But James cared. James ached. He stood at the edge of the sidewalk, fingers trembling slightly as they gripped the manila folder pressed against his chest like a shield, or maybe a prayer. Inside his resume, printed on paper he'd begged for at the library, notes scribbled in margins, STAR method, situation, task, action, result, ink smudged from sweat and rereading, a printed company logo he'd studied until his eyes burned, project management, his dream, his escape. He adjusted his tie, the only one he owned, threadbare at the edges, washed more times than he could count. His shoes, polished with spit and hope, his breath, shallow, his heart, hammering like it was trying to break free. This is it. 5 years. 5 years of lugging suitcases for strangers at the dusty downtown market. 5 years of haggling over coins, of skipping meals so his 3 kids could eat rice with salt. 5 years of watching his wife Jane's belly swell with their 4th child, and her eyes dim with quiet fear. He'd seen the job ad by accident, taped to a lamppost near the fish stall, flapping in the wind like a trapped bird. Project manager, Nexa Tech Solutions, apply now. He'd stared at it like it was a mirage. Then he ran home, dug out his old laptop, powered by a neighbor's Wi-Fi, typed with shaking fingers, uploaded his degree, Masters in Project Management, class of 2017, and hit send before he could talk himself out of it. 2 weeks later, the email came. Dear Mr. James Kiplagat, we are pleased to inform you that you have been shortlisted for an interview. He'd read it 10 times, then screamed, then cried, then hugged Jane so tight she laughed through tears. For weeks he became a student again, nights swallowed by research, Nexa Tech CEO, their latest projects, their company values, innovation, integrity, impact. He practiced answers in the mirror. He recorded himself. He made Jane quiz him while she stirred thin soup on the stove. What's your greatest weakness? She'd ask. I care too much, he'd say, half joking. She'd smile, then let them see that. Now, standing outside the Nexatech tower, a shimmering blade of glass and ambition, he whispered to himself, don't mess this up, James. This isn't just for you, it's for them. He took a step forward, then a gasp, a thud, a body crumpling to the pavement, right at the gate. An old woman, frail, dressed in faded brown, one sandal flung off, her face pale as paper. James froze. People streamed past her, men in suits, women clutching portfolios, all heading for the same interview, all pretending not to see. One man in a navy blazer actually stepped over her leg. James' folder slipped in his grip. Go, just go. You're already late. This isn't your problem. Someone else will help. He took another step, then stopped, looked back. The woman wasn't moving, and no one was stopping. His hand drifted to his pocket, felt the coins inside. Dinner coins, the only money he had until this job. His throat tightened. The clock on his cracked phone blinked. 8:30 a.m. Interview 9 a.m. He had 30 minutes, and a choice. Time didn't slow down for James. It shattered. 1 second, he was rehearsing his opening line. Thank you for this opportunity. I believe my resilience and leadership under pressure, and the next the world narrowed to the crumpled body of an old woman at his feet. Her breath came in shallow, ragged gasps. Her fingers twitched against the pavement, like dry leaves caught in a dying wind. A small woven bag lay spilled beside her. A few coins, a wrinkled handkerchief, a faded photo of a smiling child. James dropped to his knees. Mum, can you hear me? No answer. He looked up, frantic. Somebody help. A man in a charcoal suit glanced over, then walked faster. A woman in heels clicked past without breaking stride. A security guard at the gate. Nowhere in sight. James's pulse roared in his ears. They're all going to the interview. Like me. Like I was. He checked his phone again. 8:32 a.m. If I leave now, I can still make it. Barely. He stood. Took 1 step toward the gate, then stopped. Looked back. The woman's eyelids fluttered. A soft moan escaped her lips. James swore under his breath, not in anger, but in surrender. God forgive me if I'm wrong. but I can't walk away." He dropped his folder on the ground, the folder that held his future, and scooped the woman into his arms. She was lighter than his youngest son, fragile, like holding a bird with broken wings. He fumbled in his pocket. 7 coins. All he had. He waved down a taxi with his free hand, voice cracking. "Hospital. Please, Mercy General. I'll pay you everything I have." The driver, a grizzled man with tired eyes, took one look at James's face, the desperation, the sweat, the trembling, and nodded. "Get in." James shoved the coins into the driver's palm. "It's all I have, I swear," and climbed in, cradling the woman's head against his chest. As the taxi lurched into traffic, James stared out the window. Nexotech Tower shrank in the distance, his folder still lying on the pavement, his interview slipping through his fingers, his children's full stomachs, his wife's hopeful smile, the warm bed they could finally afford, gone. All of it traded for a stranger's breath. The driver glanced in the rear view. "You missed something important, huh?" James didn't answer. He just held the woman tighter and whispered, so quiet even he barely heard it, "Forgive me, Jane." The hospital smelled like bleach and bad news. James paced outside the ER doors, barefoot. He'd lost a shoe in the taxi scramble, his shirt soaked through with sweat and panic. He kept glancing at his phone. 8:52 a.m. 8 minutes. He could still make it. Maybe. If they were running late, if the elevators were fast, if the hiring manager was feeling generous today. A nurse stepped out, clipboard in hand. "She's stable. Dehydration. Low blood sugar. Are you her family?" "No," James panted. "I just found her, outside Nexotech." The nurse raised an eyebrow. "You brought her in? Paid the fare?" James nodded, too breathless to speak. "Good man," she said simply. "She's asking for you." James hesitated, looked at his phone. 8:55 a.m. 5 minutes. He stepped inside. The old woman, eyes now open, weak but aware, reached for him with trembling fingers. You carried me," she whispered. James swallowed. "Just get better, ma'am." She tried to speak again, but he gently squeezed her hand. "I have to go. I'm late for something." He didn't say what. He didn't have to. Her eyes softened. "God go with you." He ran. Not walked. Ran. Barefoot on hot pavement. Past food carts and honking bikes. Past beggars and businessmen. His folder? Gone. His tie? Flying behind him like a surrender flag. His lungs? Burning. His legs? Screaming. He didn't care. He had 3 children counting on him. A pregnant wife whispering his name like a prayer every night. A future that was slipping through his fingers like smoke. He turned the final corner. Nexotech Tower loomed ahead. The gate, the glass doors, the clock above the entrance. 9:03 a.m. 3 minutes late, he sprinted the last 100 yards, skidding to a stop at the front desk, gasping, wild-eyed. "James, I'm here for the 9 a.m. interview. Project management. I'm so sorry I'm late." There was an emergency. An old woman collapsed. I took her to the hospital. "Please, just let me explain." The receptionist, sleek bun, icy stare, didn't look up from her screen. Interviews closed at 9 o'clock sharp. No exceptions. But. No buts. She finally looked at him, took in his bare foot, his sweat-stained shirt, his trembling hands. "You're not dressed for this company," she said coolly. "Security will escort you out." James's knees nearly buckled. "Please, this is my only chance. My wife is pregnant. My kids haven't eaten meat in months. I studied for weeks. I have a master's. I don't care if you have a PhD from Mars," she snapped. "Rules are rules." A security guard approached. James didn't fight. He just turned, walked out, sat down on the curb, right where he'd found the woman, right where his life had split in two. He buried his face in his hands and wept. Not loud sobs, not dramatic wails, quiet, shaking, devastated, the kind of crying that hollows you out. People walked past. Some glanced. None stopped. His phone buzzed. A text from Jane. "Baby kicked today. She says hi to Daddy. How did it go? James stared at the screen, his vision blurred. How could he tell her? I didn't even get to walk in, Jane. I gave our last coins to save a stranger. And now, nothing. He wanted to scream, wanted to punch the pavement, wanted to vanish. Instead, he wiped his face with his sleeve, stood up, straightened his ruined shirt, and whispered to the sky. What now, God? What now? James didn't move. He sat on that curb like a discarded shoe, one foot bare, the other still trapped in a scuffed loafer, his interview folder long gone, probably kicked into a gutter by now. His eyes were dry, hollow, his spirit crushed. Cars glided past. Suits marched in and out of Nexatek's glass doors, some smug, some disappointed, all seen, all considered. He was invisible. Worse, he was nothing. He stared at his phone again. Jane's text glowed like an accusation. Baby kicked today. She says hi to Daddy. How did it go? He couldn't answer. Not yet. Maybe not ever. He took a breath, stood up, brushed dust off his pants, turned to leave. That's when he heard it. Honk, honk, sharp, impatient. A long black luxury sedan, sleek as a shark, idled at the gate. The driver's window rolled down. A man in a charcoal suit and gold-rimmed glasses tapped his steering wheel, frowning. The gate, automated, heavy, imposing, remained shut. No gatekeeper in sight. Again, James sighed. Not my problem. He took a step away, then stopped. Old habits die hard. 5 years of serving strangers, carrying their bags, fetching their water, smiling through hunger, had carved something into him. Service, even when no one was watching, even when it cost him. He walked to the gate, pressed the manual override button. The heavy steel arms groaned, then lifted. The car glided through. James walked to the other side, pressed the close button. Gate shut. Job done. He turned to leave again. Hey. The voice was calm, commanding. James turned. The man in the suit had stepped out of the car, tall, silver-haired. Expensive cologne. Watch worth more than James's entire wardrobe. You work here? The man asked. James shook his head. No, sir. Just helped. The man studied him. The bare foot, the sweat, the defeat in his eyes. You were at the interview. It wasn't a question. James swallowed. I was late. They didn't let me in. The man nodded slowly. Shame. You look like you needed it. James didn't answer. What was there to say? The man extended a hand. Mark Wellington, CEO. James' eyes widened. The Mark Wellington. The man whose TED Talk he'd watched 17 times. The man whose leadership philosophy he'd quoted in his cover letter. James shook his hand weakly. James Kiplagat. Sir. Mark didn't let go. You just saved me 10 minutes of yelling at my useless gatekeeper. Again. Third time this week. He glanced at the empty booth. I was going to fire him tomorrow. No notice. Then he looked back at James. How'd you like his job? James blinked. Sir. Gatekeeper. Starting tomorrow, 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. Salary, $15K a month. Health insurance. Paid leave. James' mouth opened. Nothing came out. It wasn't the job he wanted. It wasn't the life he dreamed of. But it was something steady, safe, better than hauling bags under the sun for coins. He thought of Jane, of the baby, of the landlord's knock getting louder every week. He swallowed his pride. Yes, sir, I'll take it. Mark smiled. Small but real. Good. HR will have your contract ready by noon. Start tomorrow. He turned to go, then paused. Oh, and James? Yes, sir. Wear shoes next time. And with that, Mark Wellington disappeared into the tower. James stood there, barefoot, bewildered, a gatekeeper. Not a project manager, not a leader, not a provider in the way he'd promised, but employed. He looked down at his one shoe, then up at the towering glass building, and whispered, It's not the door I wanted, but it's a door, rain or shine. James was there. 7 a.m. sharp, polished shoes, crisp white shirt, bought with his first paycheck, a thermos of weak tea in his hand. No sugar, but hot, enough to keep the cold out. He didn't just open the gate, he welcomed the day. "Good morning, Miss Patel. Umbrella day. I've got one right here for you. Mr. Davies, your parking pass is reprinted and waiting. Delivery van. Third bay on the left, sir. I'll radio security to clear the path." He remembered names, birthdays, coffee orders, who hated small talk, who needed a smile before their 8 a.m. meeting from hell. He swept the walkway before the first car arrived. He cleared leaves after storms. He helped interns find the right elevator. He even kept a basket of mints near the booth. For the morning breath warriors, he'd joke. People noticed, not with fanfare, not with promotions, but with nods, with thank yous, with lingering smiles. And Mark Wellington, he noticed most. Every morning, like clockwork, Mark's black sedan would pull up, and every morning, James would open the gate, close it behind him, then step to the driver's window. "Morning, sir. Coffee's extra hot today. Heard you've got the board meeting." Mark would chuckle. "You're better than my assistant." One day, Mark rolled down the window and handed James a crisp 500-shilling note. "For the mints," he said. James refused. "Company policy, sir. No tips." Mark raised an eyebrow. "Since when?" "Since I started." James smiled. "Integrity's in the job description, even for gatekeepers." Mark stared at him, then slowly took the note back. "You're something else, James." At home, that night Jane stirred a pot of beans, fuller now with tomatoes, even a scrap of meat. James sat at the table, feet sore, back aching, but eyes calm. He told her about the tip, about Mark's comment. Jane smiled, belly round and glowing in the lamplight. "You think you're just opening a gate, James, but you're opening hearts. Doors follow hearts." He kissed her forehead. "I miss the dream sometimes," he admitted quietly. "The office, the title, the respect." She took his hand. "Respect isn't given with a title. It's earned in the quiet. And you're earning it in gallons." 6 months later, James still opened the gate, still smiled, still remembered, still refused tips, though Mark now slipped gift cards into his contract renewal envelope. "For the kids," he'd say. The company buzzed with rumors. "Did you hear? The new vice president of operations started as a janitor. Mark promoted his driver last year, said he had vision." James never dreamed it could be him. He was the gatekeeper. And that was enough, until the day the black sedan pulled up again. And in the passenger seat, frail but smiling, sat her. The woman, the one he'd carried, the one who'd cost him everything. James didn't recognize her at first, not until she rolled down the window and locked eyes with him. Her breath caught. "You." James froze. Heart stopped. The morning air was crisp. Birds chirped. The city hummed. James, as always, stood at attention beside the gate, clipboard in hand, smile ready. Mark's black sedan glided toward him. Smooth, silent, expensive. James hit the button. The gate lifted. As the car passed through, James stepped toward the driver's window. "Same as every morning." "Morning, sir. Traffic's light today, you'll beat the 8:30 rush." Mark nodded, sipping from a travel mug. "You're a national treasure, James." Then, the passenger window rolled down. Slowly, James turned, polite, professional. "Good morning, ma'am. Welcome to Nexatech." He froze. Her. The old woman, fragile then, radiant now, eyes sharp, smile trembling. She stared at him like she was seeing a ghost or an angel. "You," she whispered, voice thick, hands shaking. James' blood turned to ice. Did I hurt her? Did I do something wrong at the hospital? Is this a lawsuit? He took a step back. "Ma'am, do I know you?" She didn't answer. Instead, she fumbled in her woven bag. The same one, James realized with a jolt, that had spilled coins on the pavement that terrible morning. Her fingers trembled as she pulled out her phone, unlocked it, turned the screen toward him. James' breath caught. There he was, him, on the hospital, CCTV footage, drenched in sweat, shirt half torn, cradling her in his arms as he rushed through the ER doors. His face, wild with fear, burning with purpose. The timestamp, 8:37 a.m. The day of the interview, James' knees nearly buckled. Mark, sensing the tension, leaned across the seat. "Karen, what's going on?" The woman, Karen, didn't take her eyes off James. "I've been looking for you," she said, voice cracking. "Every day, for 6 months." James could only whisper, "Why?" She gripped his hand, surprisingly strong. "Because you saved my life, and no one would tell me your name. Just a well-wisher." She laughed, a sound like wind chimes. "I had to beg the hospital for the CCTV, paid them extra to enhance your face, printed it, carried it in my purse, showed it to taxi drivers, market vendors, anyone." Mark's eyes widened. "Karen, you never told me this was why you kept asking HR about the man at the gate." Karen finally released James's hand, only to clutch his arm. "I'm Karen Memborough, Board of Directors, 18% shareholder. And you," she pointed at James, tears spilling, "are the reason I'm alive to cast those votes." James's mouth opened, closed, opened again. "I didn't do anything special. Anyone would have." "No." Karen cut him off, fierce. "No one did. Except you. You gave up your last coins, your last chance, for a stranger." "What were you doing at the gate that morning you saved me?" Karen asked. "I was coming for the project management job interview." James replied. "What are your qualifications?" Karen asked. "I have a master's in project management and 4 years work experience." She turned to Mark, eyes blazing. "This man has a master's in project management, and you made him a gatekeeper." Mark's face went pale. "He never told me." James looked down. "It didn't matter, sir. The job needed doing." Karen stared at him, then slowly, reverently, she placed both hands on his cheeks. "Fate didn't bring me back to this gate by accident. James Kiplagat, it brought me here to repay you." She turned to Mark. "Call an emergency board meeting. Right now, I'm invoking Clause 7, shareholder privilege." Mark blinked. "Karen, what are you?" "I'm giving him my seat, as head of project management. Effective immediately." Silence. Even the birds stopped singing. James's voice was a thread. "What?" Karen smiled through tears. "You wanted to walk through that door 6 months ago, James. You were turned away. So today," she took his hand and placed it on the gate he'd guarded so faithfully, "I'm opening it for you." The boardroom smelled like leather, coffee, and quiet power. James stood at the threshold, still in his gatekeeper's uniform, shoes polished but simple, hands slightly trembling at his sides. He hadn't changed, hadn't showered, hadn't even called Jane. He didn't need to. This moment, it was for her, for the kids, for every night he whispered, "Just hold on." Karen walked beside him, regal in her cream blazer, gripping his arm like a shield, or a crown. Mark followed, stunned silent, still clutching his travel mug like a lifeline. The board members, 10 sharp-suited men and women, looked up from their tablets as the doors opened. Whispers died. Eyes widened. Karen didn't sit at the head of the table. She pulled out the chair next to it and gestured to James. "Sit." James hesitated. "Ma'am, sit." He sat. Karen stood at the front, back straight, voice ringing like a bell. "Ladies and gentlemen of the board, 6 months ago, I collapsed outside this building. No one stopped. No one cared. Except one man. He gave up his last coins, his last chance, a job interview right here, to save my life." She turned to James. "This man has a master's in project management, top of his class. 5 years unemployed, not for lack of skill, but because life broke him and he refused to break others." She tapped her tablet. A screen lit up behind her. James' resume. His thesis title, Leading Through Crisis, Integrity as Infrastructure. Gasps. Karen continued. "He spent 6 months as our gatekeeper, never complained, never asked for more, remembered every name, protected every visitor, refused every tip, and still smiled." She turned to Mark. "You promoted drivers, janitors, interns, but this man, you never asked what he knew, only what he did." Mark looked down. I failed him. Karen's voice softened. No, you gave him a chance to show his character, and that is worth more than any degree. She faced the board. I invoke shareholder privilege, Clause 7, effective immediately. James Kiplagat assumes my role as head of project management. I will mentor him personally. His first assignment, the Africa Innovation Hub, our most troubled, most vital project. Silence. Then one board member, an older woman with silver hair, stood. She walked to James and bowed. Welcome, Mr. Kiplagat. We've been waiting for someone like you. One by one, they stood, applauding, not for his credentials, but for his heart. James didn't cry. Not yet. He stood, turned to Karen, and bowed lower than she had. Thank you for seeing me. She cupped his face. No, James. Thank you for being you. Later that day, outside the boardroom, Mark pulled James aside, eyes wet. I had no idea. None. If I'd known. James shook his head. It's okay, sir. Maybe I needed to be the gatekeeper first, to learn that leadership isn't about the chair. It's about who you are when no one's watching. Mark clapped him on the shoulder. You're going to change this company. James smiled. I already did. At home. That evening Jane opened the door, flower on her cheek, baby on her hip. James, you're late. Did you get fired? He didn't answer. He just pulled her into a hug, tight, trembling, full of 6 years of held breath. Then he whispered, pack your bags, love. We're moving to the penthouse floor. She pulled back. What? He grinned. The first real, unburdened grin in half a decade. I got the job, Jane. The real one. She stared, then screamed, then cried, then kissed him so hard he stumbled back. The kids came running. Daddy! Daddy! What happened? James knelt, pulling them all into his arms. I helped someone, and she helped me right back. The Africa Innovation Hub wasn't just completed, it was thriving. Solar-powered labs humming with AI startups, rooftop gardens feeding local schools, a childcare center where mothers coded while their babies napped nearby, all under James Kiplagat's leadership. His title, Head of Project Management and Community Innovation. His salary, enough to buy Jane a new dress. Every second. His office, floor-to-ceiling windows. But he rarely sat behind the desk. He preferred walking the halls, remembering names, asking, how's your mother? Did your son win the match? Need an umbrella? Old habits. New impact. James stood at the gate. Not behind the booth. Not in uniform, in a tailored navy suit. Gold watch, a gift from Karen. Shoes polished to a mirror shine. Beside him, Jane, radiant, holding their newborn daughter, Grace, wrapped in a soft yellow blanket. The new gatekeeper, a young man named David, opened the gate with a grin. Morning, sir. Ma'am, baby Grace. Jane smiled. Morning, David. Coffee's on me today. He handed David a warm paper cup, then turned to Jane. Remember this spot? She looked down at the pavement, smiled. The day you lost everything, and found us a future. James nodded. He knelt, placed his palm flat on the concrete, where the old woman had fallen, where his folder had slipped, where he'd chosen mercy over ambition. Funny, he whispered. I thought I was losing my chance here. Turns out, I was planting a seed. Jane squeezed his shoulder, and look how it grew. Inside. Boardroom. Later that day Karen stood at the podium, addressing new hires. Behind her, a large framed photo, not of the CEO, not of the building, but of James, caught mid-stride on hospital CCTV, carrying her in his arms, face set with purpose. The caption beneath it, character opens doors no resume ever could. Karen's voice rang clear. Nexatech doesn't just hire talent, we hire heart. James didn't walk into this company with a title. He walked in with a choice, to help a stranger when it cost him everything. That's the kind of leader we build here. She paused, looked at James in the front row, smiled. And that's the kind of man who changes the world, one open gate at a time. James stood again at the gate. Alone this time, he ran his fingers along the cold steel bar, then pulled out his phone, dialed Jane. Hey love, you busy? Her voice, warm and sleepy, just rocking Grace. "What's up?" James looked up at the sky, gold bleeding into violet. "Nothing, just wanted to say thank you." "For what?" "For believing in me, even when I didn't." A soft laugh. "Always, James, always." He ended the call, took a deep breath, turned, and walked back into the tower, not as a beggar, not as a gatekeeper, but as a man who'd learned the deepest truth. Sometimes, the door you think closed in your face was just making room for a better one to swing wide open. All you have to do, keep walking, keep giving, keep being kind.